Cast out of their homes because of unspeakable violence and persecution, millions of refugees around the world wait desperately for a better life, and thousands are finding it in the Susquehanna Valley.
My family is very happy.
These are the new Americans, starting over in towns they know nothing about: Mechanicsburg, Harrisburg, Lancaster. But now it's home.
Now I have the opportunity, so I have to make use of my opportunity.
In their new communities, they're finding help.
Our deepest delight to be able to welcome the foreigner among us.
But not everyone sees refugees in this way. Some see risk and a path for terror to creep into our neighborhoods.
We have to stop that threat at the door to our country.
And now, with the new president wanting to halt the refugee program, where does that leave those who are already here?
They know that some of their families may not ever have the opportunity to come over here.
So who are these people who have left their entire lives behind for the chance to start again in peace?
It's a lot to sacrifice, but they do it because they have to.
And what happens now that refuge in America is no longer guaranteed?
We have no way to go back. This is our country.
Find out next on News 8's Chronicle, Refugees, Unsettled Future. Hello, I'm Kim Lemon. In the last decade, the Susquehanna Valley has opened its doors to more than 6,000 refugees from around the world. They've come from Iraq and Afghanistan, Bhutan, the Congo, Somalia, and most recently, Syria. But unlike immigrants, refugees do not choose to leave their home countries. They are forced out. Over the next half hour, News 8's Matt Barcaro will introduce us to refugees living in our communities and the debate over their future.
Alishine Osman is a one-man welcoming committee. It's his job to help refugees from war-torn nations navigate their new lives in the Susquehanna Valley. On the day we visited him in his office at the International Service Center in Harrisburg, he was helping a woman fill out paperwork so she could bring her family in Somalia to live with her. This is an unsettling time for refugees in America.
Green card, two sides.
And Alishine understands their fears and anxieties because he has them too.
I know what it is. I know what it's like, yeah.
Alishine, or Ali for short, is one of hundreds of Somali refugees resettled in the capital region. For most of his life, getting here was something he never even imagined. When Ali was 6 years old, his home country of Somalia erupted into civil war. Law and order collapsed, the government overthrown. Fearing for their safety, Ali and his family escaped the chaos, walking for 4 days to get to Kenya.
That journey from Somalia to Kenya was horrifying. It was really very difficult.
In Kenya, they joined a disillusioned community of displaced Somalis forced into refugee camps. Ali lived in this one called Ifo, an overcrowded compound of tents and huts cut off from the rest of the world. Ali was stuck here for the next 17 years of his life. The only way out was to register with the United Nations as a refugee and hope that some country, any country, would accept him. And one finally did.
I didn't even know that the United States existed. But in 2007, when my name appeared on the board, it was unbelievable for me. It was like, this is all I have been waiting for the last few years.
Ali left his family behind in the camp and set out alone for Houston, Texas, where the UN placed him. He got a job in a hotel kitchen, but was quickly fired because of his lack of skills.
So you had to start all the way back to zero.
How to navigate the whole system, getting job, and it was very difficult. And that's probably why a lot of the refugee communities, particularly the Somalis and Nepalis, move over here.
Here, as in the Susquehanna Valley, home to, on average, more than 700 new refugees each year. Church World Service in Lancaster is one of the resettlement agencies that helps refugees start over.
It's a lot to sacrifice, but they do it because they have to.
Sheila Master-Pietro is the director. Her agency helped resettle more than 550 refugees in the Lancaster area last year, its most ever, the result of a world in turmoil.
Of course, there are more refugees in the world today than at any time since World War II, but in my opinion, and I think others would agree, the need to leave is so much stronger, and it's life-threatening.
Once here, the refugees, many times arriving in families, are set up with an apartment. The kids are enrolled in school, the adults placed in jobs. Federal money helps pay for their first 3 months, and then they're on their own.
The people who make it to us, you think of all the people who are still in camp, who didn't make it out of their country alive. These are the survivors. So they're really strong people. And they bring that with them. They have a will to keep on living and to provide for their families. And not just live, but, they want to progress.
But restarting life as a stranger in a strange land is not easy. And so one of the first things refugees tend to do after they're placed is find another refugee, someone like themselves. And perhaps nowhere is this human chain phenomenon more noticeable than in the Cumberland Point neighborhood in Mechanicsburg. Here, just about every one of the apartments in this complex is home to a Somali refugee family.
Assalamu alaikum.
Hi, alaikum salam.
How you doing, man?
Good, alhamdulillah.
Abdi Noor was one of the first Somalis to resettle in Mechanicsburg in 2001, knowing nothing of his new home.
Remember that time in summertime we used to have a jacket, big jacket, because we thought like America is cold and snow last time we have. So we came here. It was hot.
But Mechanicsburg was safe. He found a job at a warehouse, learned to drive, started a family. Quite a change from his earlier life as a nomadic farmer in Somalia. Yet for years, he was one of the only Somalis around.
Yes, it was lonely. It was lonely but it was few people there that time, so it was lonely, but we get used to the lonely,
The loneliness ended though when one day he got a call from his friend Mohammed Osman. The two were neighbors at the Ifo refugee camp in Kenya. Mohammed was now a refugee resettled in Virginia, but there weren't many other Somalis there. So he moved to Mechanicsburg to be closer to Abdi. And then Mohammed kept the human chain going, asking his cousin who was placed in Houston to join them. And Alishine Osman quickly packed his bags.
It really changed a lot about my life.
Finally at home with other Somali refugees, Ali put himself through college, earned a master's degree, became a U.S. citizen. He worked 3 jobs at once and sent money back to his family. They were still living in the same refugee camp in Kenya that Ali left 9 years prior. But that changed this summer, when Ali added yet another link to the Somali chain. He welcomed his wife, Fatima, and children, Mohammed Amin and Sumayo, to his new and bigger apartment, together as a family, starting over in America.
A lot of people that live in the refugee camp dream this type of, achievements every day, but it's only very tiny population that get the opportunity, and I think those who get the opportunity need to, make use of it. You can't just throw out the opportunity like this, so it has to count.
But how can you make it count when you're living in limbo?
Why he is scared?
Many Syrian refugee families feel caught up in a legal battle as the president orders a stop to the refugee program.
The infiltrators are the concern.
What life is like unsettled.
Welcome back to News 8's Chronicle, Refugees' Unsettled Future. Perhaps no group of refugees is facing more scrutiny than those fleeing the civil war in Syria. More than 10,000 Syrian refugees resettled in the United States last year. But now President Donald Trump is trying to suspend the program, citing security concerns. So where does that leave the refugees who are here? News 8's Matt Barcaro picks up the story.
The house is about as unassuming as it can get. Just another corner home in suburban America. But this home is a palace to the Al Ghuthani boys. They're up early, dressed and ready to take on the day, itching to get to school. And their father, Mohammed, loves it.
My family is very happy. Yes.
The Al Ghuthanis find themselves jumping at any opportunities they can find now, because their journey to get here took years, and they have a lot of lost time to make up. The older boys, Muath, Haroon, and Ahmad, are adjusting well to their new school routine, the first time they've had steady education in years. But their escape from their home in Syria 4 years ago will always be a searing memory. Ahmad wears the peril of their escape on his arm, a shrapnel wound. As they ran from their village under the cover of night, a bomb fell near them. It killed 6 people. Parts of the bomb hit Ahmad, but he and his family kept running, afraid that if they stopped, they would die too. But you can't see 5-year-old Mustafa's wounds. He was just a toddler then, yet he hasn't shaken the trauma and rarely leaves his father's side. The anxiety's so bad, Muhammad sometimes goes to Mustafa's school with him and sits in the classroom for the day, just to get him through it. But today Mustafa wouldn't even go that far. So he and his dad turned around and walked home together. And it's okay, because Muhammad hasn't forgotten the war either.
It must have been very difficult to live there during the war.
Yes, very difficult.
He showed us pictures of his village near Dara, Syria. In 2011, protests against the Syrian government in Dara and the government's violent response triggered the bloody civil war that is still raging.
You see this?
The bomb hit the roof.
Yes.
In the siege, the supermarket Muhammad owned was destroyed, so he drove his family to the neighboring town every day to wait out the bombings and drove them back at night. That lasted a year, until they no longer had a house to drive back to.
Three bombs in my home. 3.
So they turned away for good.
Yes.
The Al-Guthanis next tried living in the Zatari refugee camp in Jordan, but they lasted just a month. Outside the camp, the family got by with the money Muhammad saved from Syria, but it didn't last long, and they waited 4 years for a rescue. The Al-Guthanis ultimately applied for refugee status with the United Nations and were chosen to resettle in Lancaster, in a modest house with something they had never had before, a yard. Muhammad had to learn how to mow it, but he says life in Lancaster was an easy adjustment.
You're tired. You won't sleep. Oh. I don't know. You cannot sleep. You're fear, you're scared. That's the problem.
Are you sleeping now?
Yes, sure.
And that, after years of bomb-filled sleepless nights, he says, is the best part of his new neighborhood.
This area is quiet, very quiet, especially at night.
The Al-Guthanis are among about 80 Syrian refugees who have resettled in and around Lancaster and Harrisburg in the last year. Khalida Abdullah Haman is one of them. Her family just barely escaped Aleppo, the epicenter of the violence in the Syrian war. A bomb fell on our house, she says, but through the refugee program, Khalida and her family found a new home in Lancaster. Here, she's working the first job she's ever had, making, of all things, Dutch cookies called stroopies in a little bakery on North Duke Street. Khalida works alongside 2 other refugee women hired by Jenny Groff.
And you've had no hesitation to employ them?
No, absolutely not.
Groff and her husband committed to hiring only refugees to staff their bakery. They saw a need in the community to give refugee families their fresh start. The Groffs even provide a half-hour English class during lunch break.
How would you describe these women as employees?
Oh my goodness, they are just a delight. We couldn't be more thrilled. In fact, I feel like they make stroopies much better than I do.
Khalida says it doesn't matter what challenges she's facing in America. She just wants to provide for her children so they can go to college.
And I'm sure you've heard of the opposition or the skepticism of having refugees in the community. But you've seen a different perspective?
Oh, for sure, yeah.
But not all in Pennsylvania see things her way. After the Paris terror attack in 2015, where one of the bombers posed as a Syrian refugee, hundreds of people gathered at the state capitol in Harrisburg to protest. Governor Tom Wolf had just committed to continue allowing Syrian refugees to resettle in the state. State Representative Darrell Metcalf led the opposition that day and still believes in it today.
I don't think that we should be putting those individuals on planes and ships and bringing them across the United States of America where they're potentially going to cause safety issues for our own citizens, for Americans.
So you would prefer that these refugees stay in the countries where they have been forced out?
There's a lot of people coming out of those countries that weren't necessarily fleeing or weren't pushed out, but they were fleeing to try and find something better and something safer for them and their families, some of them, but the infiltrators are the concern.
Metcalf's problem with the United Nations refugee program is the vetting process, interviews and investigations that help determine if refugees would pose any threats if they're resettled. The White House, under the Obama administration, said refugees had to clear at least 8 rounds of screenings before being granted resettlement, and Syrian refugees faced even more scrutiny. The UN says fewer than 1% of the refugees worldwide advanced past the first round. But Metcalf and other critics doubt Syrians in particular have the proper documentation for the screenings, given many left their homes with nothing. So he believes the refugees, especially from regions where terrorism is known to fester, should not be granted resettlement.
But what about these families?
Our hearts as Americans certainly break for those stories that we read and for those tragic circumstances that we hear about. But we don't have the resources or the capability to help everybody. And we have to start at home first. All it takes is one man, woman, or child with a suicide bomb to kill dozens, if not hundreds, in this country.
But now the future of the refugee program in the United States is very much in doubt. President Donald Trump is trying to suspend the entire refugee process and stop the resettlement of Syrians indefinitely. But Muhammad al-Ghuthani, the refugee from Syria, does not understand it. He says his neighbors support him and help him. We stand together! Thousands even rallied in Lancaster to say they welcome refugees in their community. And Muhammad does not know why the new president can't see that.
Why he is scared? That's the question. Why he is scared? This people, refugee, all refugee, maybe, and especially in Syria, his people, he want peace.
Coming up, refugees waste no time settling into their new communities.
This is our country.
But is it that simple?
I want to remember my culture too.
How generations of new Americans find their new identities. The refugee story is the story of the search for an identity. Many refugees I've met told me they felt they lost their identities the moment they fled their home countries. But embracing a new identity as an American is not as simple as it sounds. Waiting is a skill refugees learn out of necessity. Waiting for help, for safety, for a rescue. And now Prem Archaya is waiting again, but this time he's waiting for refugees to get to him. His in-laws' family is about to arrive in Harrisburg. This will be the last stop in their resettlement from a refugee camp in Nepal.
They are here in the land of opportunities.
The land of opportunities, and far away from their homeland, Bhutan, a majority Buddhist country in the eastern Himalayas. More than 100,000 people, including Prem, have fled Bhutan, fearing if they stayed, they'd be persecuted. They are Nepalis, part of the ethnic minority in Bhutan. In the 90s, Bhutan's government violently cracked down on the Nepalis, stripped them of their citizenship and property, and forced them into camps. Most of those refugees have found a safe haven in the United States. And Mahanda Pokral is especially thankful to have a new home in Harrisburg. He was stuck in the refugee camp in Nepal for 20 years.
This is environment.
Mahanda says he's surprised at how beautiful America is. What he saw just in the drive from the airport is giving him energy, he says, to make the most of his second chance. And the path ahead for refugees requires a lot of energy.
What is one power of the states?
Because being a refugee in a new country is a balancing act, holding on to their past while learning the ways of their new world. In the last decade, about 10,000 refugees from Bhutan have resettled in the Harrisburg area, one of the largest such communities in the country. And at some point, the refugees here have probably met Tika Dangana.
Not more than 9. Working hard.
Tika is a refugee himself who resettled here at the start of the Bhutanese migration in 2008. He was an early organizer inside his community and arranged classes to teach English to the recently resettled. He also developed courses to help refugees prepare for their citizenship tests. These classes highlight best the urgency refugees feel to get on with their new lives, the Bhutanese in particular.
They wanted by any means to become the citizen of this country, just to say to the world that we are now a citizen at least.
Refugees can take the citizenship test once they've lived in the U.S. for 5 years. Many of the refugees in this room haven't been here that long, but they're eager to learn about their new country. become part of it and regain the right of citizenship that was stripped from them in Bhutan. Narad Dahal and his wife Nar study here most Sundays, picking up the English language as they go. The Dahals were farmers in Bhutan, but the government took their farm and cast them out. We lived in a plastic tent with no electricity, Nar told us. 5 of her children were born in the Nepali refugee camp, and Narad and Nar thought they would die there. But now in Harrisburg, they are wasting no time building up their new identities as Americans. And Tika told us most Bhutanese refugees are in that same race to capture the American dream.
We have no way to go back to Nepal or Bhutan. Our people now realize that this is our country.
Hallelujah. And so they're settling in, going to church, getting jobs, usually in warehouses where the language barrier is less of an issue, putting their children in school and planting new roots, like the Dahals, who just a few years ago were living in that plastic tent. The best part about being in America, Nar told us, is that we bought a house, slowly reclaiming their stake in society. But a refugee's life is a balancing act, because as much as they strive to become Americans and share in the dream, they also don't want to lose touch of their past and how they got here. So at the same time Nepali-speaking adults are trying to learn English, their English-speaking children are doing the opposite. Every Saturday, in the basement of a church in Pembroke, Bhutanese children, most from refugee families, go to school to learn their parents' native language. The Dahal's daughter, Samiksha, is one of the students. Some of the youngest were born in the United States, yet even the oldest have only few memories of life in the refugee camps.
We had to collect wood and then somehow make fire. I don't know what they did to make fire. And then we had to cook. Now we can just turn it on and the gas comes on.
Roju Dangana was a baby when her family left their camp in Nepal for the U.S. She's here now for the same reason many of the other children are, to learn Nepali so she can talk with the older members of her family.
If I speak too much English and only learn English, then I will not remember my culture anymore. So I want to remember my culture too.
But this balance between cultures tilts heavily toward their new identities as Americans. And that drive to become a citizen again is why Buddha Dangana is here at a naturalization ceremony in Dauphin County, about to be sworn in as a new citizen of the United States. These ceremonies are held throughout the year in Pennsylvania, and Bhutanese refugees are often represented at each of them.
Congratulations.
It's a significant moment in their lives, one of achievement, joy, and relief, that they are finally part of a country that accepts and protects them. And Tika Dangana, the Bhutanese refugee leader in Harrisburg, is soaking it all in. Buddha is his mother, and he says he has never been prouder than he is right now.
I told her that she is blessed today, and she wishes America, God bless to America. Thank you.
Coming up on News 8's Chronicle, so much uncertainty in just a few weeks. See how the lives of each of the refugees you've met have changed with the stroke of a pen.
Welcome back, everyone. Resettlement agencies tell us that you can help refugees in your community. They accept clothes, furniture, and personal care items. Anything a family would need when moving into a home for the first time. We have a link to the agencies through our website, WGAL.com. We've been following the lives of refugees in the Susquehanna Valley for months now. And in light of the president's executive action seeking to block travel and suspend the refugee program, their stories have each taken a turn. News 8's Matt Barquero shows us how.
Since we last saw Nar and Narad Dahal, refugees from Bhutan, they are closer than ever to becoming Americans. Soon they'll be taking their citizenship tests. But they're scared that while they're waiting, their pathway to citizenship might change, and they may no longer be welcome here.
Tomorrow?
Alishine Osman is busier than ever at his job. Many of his fellow Somali refugees have been asking him what a temporary travel ban from Somalia would mean for them. And it affects Ali directly. His mother, Fatuma, was supposed to come to America in April, followed by his 2 younger brothers. But with a travel ban, their reunion may be delayed months, if not years. Ollie's family in Mechanicsburg, though, has already grown. He and his wife welcomed their daughter, Sophia, to the world in December. And like most refugees hard at work, Muhammad Al-Guthani has become a standout employee at this dry cleaner in Lancaster. His wife works here too. But their family is not yet fully reunited. Muhammad is hoping his parents will one day escape Syria and join them in America. But with the possibility of the Syrian refugee program being put indefinitely on hold, he now does not know if he will ever see them again. And that's life as a refugee in today's world. Safe now, but facing a future that is far from settled.
That's all for this News 8 Chronicle special. For Matt Barcaro and all of us here at News 8, I'm Kim Lemon. Thank you for joining us.